All right, so welcome to another episode of the Sports Vision Pros Prospective. Tonight, we're extremely fortunate to have a good friend of mine and an amazing person on the video conference with us. We have Mr. Eric Waters, the head trainer with the Utah Jazz, who's been around the NBA for about as long as I've been an eye doctor, probably a little bit longer, actually. Very experienced and extremely fantastic individual, but we're thrilled to have him here. We wanted to ask a couple of questions specifically related to the relationship between optometrists and athletic trainers. Also get into a little bit of the specifics of professional basketball and just basketball in general related to vision. But Eric has some amazing experience back to multiple different sports through the Olympic programs and things like that. So I'd like to do a quick introduction for Eric and have him talk a little bit about what he's done in the past with sports and then tie it into kind of what we're all talking about on this website. So Eric, it's a pleasure to have you, my friend.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Kind words. Well, background, I don't want to go too far back because I basically have just been working in the NBA the last 17 years. So starting my 17th season, I guess, in the NBA. So I met you that long ago and started what I consider that you brought to our program, an in-depth approach to sports vision like I've never experienced anywhere else. So been fortunate to have that exposure. So appreciate the time to chat about it. Yeah.
So, I mean, look, it's been my pleasure. And I think one of the questions that we get asked quite a bit, on our Sports Vision Pros website, as well as, just individually in phone calls to our office is, hey, it looks really exciting, looks really fun to work with a sports team or to be involved with different teams. How do I do it? How do I reach out to a team? Should I call the coach? Should I call the general manager if it's a professional team? My answer, and I think the same from my colleagues, Dr. Horn, Dr. Cunningham here is, that the athletic trainer is always sort of the top of the pyramid, the spearhead of communication that, all communication that I've ever experienced through every professional team I've had a chance to work with, it always starts and ends with the athletic trainer. So we always kind of make that point of the athletic trainer kind of being your best friend, but also being your major point of contact communication-wise and otherwise. So you're the athletic trainer. You're the one picking up the phone. If a doc picks up the phone, an eye doctor specifically, and says, hey, I'd love to have an opportunity to meet with you, talk with you, what do you want to hear from that individual that tells you that's worth getting in through the door? And what are you looking for in having that relationship with an optometrist?
Well, I think that one of the most important things is being cognizant of the time that you're calling them, when you're calling them. It's best to call them maybe in the off season or just at the end of the season, or maybe, what you consider downtime for us. We're more apt to be able to have the time to discuss, the things that you'd like to talk about. So in terms of being involved, I think the athletic trainer is a great place to start. They're the ones that they're the hub of the wheel, I guess. And they're the ones that are kind of the gatekeepers to the healthcare of the athlete. Obviously you'll have the physicians that you're working with as well, but they tend to be on the outside of the hub. So I think it's a good place to start. And some of the things that would pique my interest are, and that would help pique not only my interest, but the coach's interest, general manager's interest, management's interest, is what can you do for the team, not only from a health perspective, but performance wise. You've been extremely valuable because you've been on call all the time. You've always answered when we called. You've had, great intervention for injuries, eye injuries, and things that we've needed. But you've also really cutting edge and forward thinking when it comes to the performance aspect of it. So having a knowledge base of all of those things and being very thorough, those are the things that pique my interest when we discuss stuff. So
Well, I think one of the other things is, I mean, and to that point, I always educate, look, your first phone call shouldn't be to probably the coach or certainly not to the ownership or front office of the team outside of the trainer. And I think a lot of what we've built over the time that we've had the pleasure of working together, Eric, is a trust, right? Is a relationship that we've built. And that doesn't happen over a phone call. It doesn't happen, over, maybe a preseason evaluation. It comes over time. And I think, that's something that, as trainers and certainly as professional trainers, you have to also wear that hat of being protective of your players. And there's a lot of people that reach out that want to have a player endorse something or, market something or get their picture taken for the wall or whatever. But, what's the best way really for that new doc within your team to build the trust level with you and really show you that he's there for sort of the right reasons?
Yeah. You may have a relationship with somebody else in the organization, but and that's okay if that's the way that you can be involved with sports. But you should always include the athletic trainer. They can make your life very unpleasant if you do an end run around them. So yeah, I agree with you with that. Yeah.
Well, Eric, from the outside looking in, I think one of the things that most people probably don't realize is the athletic trainer is the person that really only gets the confidentiality or gets the unique relationship with the players, that they'll share confidential information that they wouldn't even want to share with coaches or management. And that's sometimes whether it's the team physician or the team doctors or the trainer needs to know. And also they need to gain the trust of the trainer in order to do so. And likewise, the management trusts the trainer to bring them certain issues that, may not be traded between players and management as well. So one of the things I do want to mention, though, is that, again, people that aren't familiar with the situation kind of that you and Keith have, that's not the norm. I think a lot of what I found is the issue with a lot of the professional teams that I've ever been approached by is a lot of them will say, well, we got a doctor, we got an ophthalmologist on staff, we're good. They don't understand the concept of vision enhancement, performance enhancement, making the players better. They don't even know that that's even part of the game. How do we kind of bridge that with not only doctors, but trainers as well, and let them understand that, just a team doctor has nothing to do with increasing performance per se. That's not what they're medically trained to do. They're there for, blow up fractures and fingers to the eye. And that's about the limit of what their training entails.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And you're right. I mean, Keith and I built a relationship over, 12 years that we worked together. And it isn't the norm. I think when you're talking about the performance aspect, that's an important aspect. And you can also have a relationship with if the coaches know that you are there to help their team win, help their players perform better. They're more apt to be accepting. And that's sometimes the hurdle for the athletic trainer is, how do I get this person involved when we already have maybe somebody on staff that's trained for more of the emergency kind of situation or the maintenance kind of situation that we might have. Yeah, that's interesting in that, I guess, Keith, what do you think? Maybe you can answer that. It's just
I mean, I think, we had a fantastic relationship with our team ophthalmologist, and, we worked together seamlessly. I think, going back to the trainer being the hub of the wheel, as Eric said, the communication flows through the trainer. So there are certain things certainly more appropriate to put on the lap of the team ophthalmologist. And Derek's point, a blowout fracture, or a player who's interested in laser vision correction, or whatever it might be. But, we look at it and we kind of discussed it as physical versus functional, right? That the ophthalmologist is really the physical doc that's there for any physical management that needs done with injuries and that sort of thing. And the optometrist is being sort of the functional specialist, looking at maximizing visual performance and potentially preventing injuries, which is another angle we talk about from the vision enhancement standpoint. So I think that's the thing that we have to have, is that communication and understanding that, every team that Eric's ever worked with and I've ever worked with has an orthopedic surgeon, but they also have a physical therapist. They also have a chiropractor. They also have an internal medicine doc that do things slightly differently. I mean, we have a podiatrist and we also have an orthopod, right? So, but if they don't work together with the physical functional aspect of things, at the end of the day, we want our players to perform at their best and to stay healthy. And if we're all there for the right reasons, then, there's plenty of, place settings at the table, right? So if we're all working together as a team, we all win. I mean, I think that's the way we approach it. And that's the way I would hope my colleagues go and try to approach it themselves.
Yeah, and it's a new thing. I mean, moving out here with the Utah Jazz, we have some great eye physicians, and they're just now willingly wading into the waters of vision performance, and you've kind of been, co-sponsoring that a little bit with some of your suggestions about what they could do to increase their exposure to that, et cetera. So you're right. It's not Derek's points well taken. It's not common. And it's becoming more and more common. Specialization, tertiary care, performance bleeding into everything else, sports science and medicine mixing together, performance and medicine mixing together. These lines are all blurred, and they're getting blurrier and blurrier, which is a good thing, because all these disciplines are having to, understand each other, and that makes for an environment that is eventually much more efficient. So there is a place, especially for you guys. This is the uncharted frontier in sports performance is vision, in my opinion, and not only in injury prevention, but obviously, playing better.
Yeah, and I think that it's a great point, Eric, and it's something from a sports vision standpoint, from a sports medicine perspective. The bell that's been rung by sports vision specialists for 50 years has been that we might be able to do something to help you play better. And in my experience, and this is something that again, Eric and I, with our long relationship, we've seen a lot of players with big contracts that have been signed to max deals in the NBA. That once you reach a certain status, a certain point, you've sort of achieved your pinnacle. So if you have a young upstart doc or somebody that maybe you don't have the relationship with because you're new to the team, coming in and saying there's something I can do to maybe make you better. Well, how much better are you going to make me? I just signed a $120 million deal, right? So I mean, there's some of that. I think that there's always what can you really do to make me better? And you build the relationship, you build the trust, and then maybe that door opens a little bit. But I think for me, the other angle that now has been something that really I think we can also stand on as a platform from a sports vision standpoint is the injury prevention road. So, there's, I think, a lot of studies and research ongoing and things that have been published already talking about potential injury avoidance and injuries that could have been related to deficient visual skill sets and such. So I'm going to ask Eric a little bit on what he's heard from a training standpoint, because we've related a couple of studies from a vision standpoint that come out through the optometry, ophthalmology channels. But what have you heard specifically through athletic training standpoint and studies relating potentially to injury prevention in visual skills? We talked a couple about those briefly, but could you go over those again?
Yeah, I mean, there's some interest in vision's role. I mean, visual spatial role in injury prevention in terms of, for instance, there's been some talk about, specifically in a few of our sports and within the NBA, losing guys to ACL injuries and some of these guys make movements and landings, jump landing tasks where they've done it thousands and thousands of times, but the one time they may tear an ACL. Why is that? Well, some of this, there's some data to show that these guys are looking in a different direction than and not paying attention to what's in front of them or below them when they're landing. And this is when they're having a knee abduction moment where they tear an ACL. I mean, there's all sorts of avenues there with visual spatial awareness and how it plays into proprioception and injury prevention, whether it's an ankle sprain or a more severe injury like a knee injury, an ACL tear or something. There's a long way to go. We have a long way to go in exploring that stuff. So.
Well, I think one of the frontiers that Eric and I have worked closely together on too is a lot of situations of concussion recovery, right? And optometry's role and vision's role in helping, in part of being that integral part of a rehabilitation team for athletes in concussion. And I believe you've talked quite a bit about that in the past too, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, there's a depression of all the stuff I talked about after concussion. There's a new study out recently. I can't remember who the author is, but you can find it. It's really intriguing. You know, post concussion and its effect on proprioception and visual spatial awareness, and how that plays into injury and trying to recover from injury and recovering from concussions. That stuff stays depressed unless you address it, and that's some of the stuff that you've brought to us when we've had those kinds of issues. It's been helpful.
And what's the current thinking as far as, you know, NBA circles and training in general, as far as the immediacy or how early you can refer a patient with a concussion with vision-related symptoms in for some therapeutic intervention? I mean, long ago are the days of sitting in a dark room and doing nothing. We all know better than that now with the Berlin conference and everything with what we know about concussion. But what's the thinking in your current, you know, NBA, you know, concussion protocols and circles as to when you would pick up the phone and reach for some intervention, you know, from a vision standpoint?
I don't think there's to be honest. And I can just tell you my own personal opinion would be as soon as possible. You want to get them you want to have them evaluated at their lowest point, in my opinion, so that you can track progress. I feel, and not only that, but a baseline testing, like some of the baseline testing you do, so you know when they're normal again or when they're back to their own baseline, and whether you can go past that. So I would say right away, as soon as possible, you know, next day, you know, as long as they're not feeling awful. You know, I think I would defer to you guys, but the thinking would be all over the place, to be honest. If I were to ask my colleagues, you're the ones that probably have a much better handle on when you should be seeing these guys.
Well, and you know what's funny, Eric? I mean, from a perspective, from an optometry standpoint, is, you know, when I was in optometry school, which, you know, seems like, you know, many moons ago, but, you know, vision training and vision therapy and sort of its core sense of, you know, physical focusing skills and eye tracking and eye movements was actually one of those things that, you know, was sort of such a fringe specialty that, you know, core ophthalmology as far as and core optometry would sort of look down on it as kind of, you know, witchcraft or something that's, you know, outside of scope of care. You know, we fit glasses and contact lenses, and, you know, there's a couple of guys on the corner that might do some vision training, you know, and it really was kind of an outside science, if you will. But I think the research in the study has certainly backed up the fact that there's credibility from visual focusing skills and physical skills that we can build from convergence in those issues, back to your point of, you know, visual processing and visual spatial skills that, you know, now you have concussion centers across the country. You have teams, you have team physicians and team doctors that are actively reaching out for someone to do visual training in post-concussion situations where there's a visual component. So to me, this is something that, you know, all of us, the three of us, Dr. Horn, Dr. Cunningham, myself, are trying to ring the bell to our colleagues to say, look, you know, these physicians, these allied health professionals are looking for us, looking for a specialist to step up and say, I can do something to help, and just be ready to pick up the phone. Because I think that's such a huge application and such a huge opportunity for our profession is to be part of that integral part of the team that, again, looking back, we would have maybe said, you know, those aren't things we want to get involved in, but I'm telling my colleagues that people are looking for you. So if you're not fresh on those skill sets, go back and reacquire them. You know, we've all been trained in that capability. So go back to it, because I think it's a truly important, you know, role that our profession plays. And I think you made another great point as to the data collection and the quantifiable data that we can give back to a training staff, you know, in that return to play progression, that we can help to make that decision as best we can without, you know, subjective qualities, right? So in the day was, you know, how's your headache? Let's grade it on a score of 1 to 5. You know, let's go through the SCAT testing. Let's do all the things that we can do. But the more quantifiable data points that we can put into that discussion, you know, the better we feel as a medical team, you know, to let that player go through that progression of return to play.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, you know, I thought, you know, before we let Eric go, because I know we take up a lot of his time and he's, you know, been incredibly generous to give it to us, but I thought maybe it'd be fun to go through just a couple of quick little cases that Eric and I shared together in our 12 years together with the teams here in Washington, that truly happened. These are truly, you know, cases that we work together with to kind of, you know, demonstrate that communication, that multidisciplinary link, and kind of how it worked. One of them was actually an orbital fracture. So I don't know if you remember that was quite a while ago, but, you know, one of our players, and it's funny, I had our NBA physicals this morning, and one of our young players new to the team actually had the exact same thing happen to him in college last year, orbital fracture, exactly the same situation that you and I went through, Eric. with a player going up for a rebound, the other guy's coming down, elbow gets into the socket the wrong way, blowout fracture in the bottom of the orbit. And, again, in our situation, it was a bit more serious than this situation. We ended up having to go through a surgical correction. But in this case, obviously the trainer was still the first one on site. Trainer was the first one to identify the situation. Team physician in the locker room helped to, again, identify where we go with it. And our first, referral was to our team ophthalmologist. So our team ophthalmologist, dealt with, what needed to be done from a medical standpoint. In this case, we referred him out to surgical correction. And after the surgical correction, we were left with a bit of double vision. I don't know if you remember this, Eric, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Seeing double vision.
It's a rehab program now.
Yeah, and it's exactly what it was.
A lot of people gloss over that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when's the last time you've gone through an ACL repair without physical therapy?
Right.
Right. So we are the functional physical therapists after the ophthalmology repair. And in this situation, we worked through, several weeks, potentially several months. I don't remember. It's been so long ago, of doing some muscular rehab and visual training at the, again, direction and encouragement of the ophthalmologist of the team to gain back functional skill sets and eliminate this athlete's double vision. I mean, this really was career threatening at that point with the fact that he healed, but healed with, a bit of, double vision from a vertical imbalance in the eyes. And after some time, we got him back. We eliminated the double vision and ended up signing a contract extension and stayed with us for another probably 4 or 5 seasons.
Yep.
So, I mean, you want to speak to that communication and kind of how that worked through and what your experience was on that? Because I think that was a perfect example of kind of how we do work together.
Well, I mean, your point that what happens if that happens on one of your teams and you don't have somebody who's taken an interest and has an expertise in sports vision, rehabilitation and that aspect of things, and from a performance perspective, you're behind the 8 ball now because there's no one to do it. I never studied that. I didn't know how to do it, but this is incredibly important, especially if it's a baseball player or somebody who takes a baseball to the eye and they have a long road ahead of them to rehab back where they can track all of the input that the sensory input that you need and how that is going to be output again. All those things would go, undone if it didn't have somebody on staff like that. So yeah, I mean, you played a very important role, and maybe the most important role in having that to be a good outcome, not only for the team but the athlete. So.
And the other one I had, I mean, we could go through some concussion things in studies, and there's a lot of things that we've done together with, visual intervention and contact lens wear, glasses wear, laser vision correction. I mean, I think one of the things that you and I have talked about through the years is the lack of studies, related to basketball, and vision. And the slip of the tongue there is because there's a multitude of studies in baseball relating baseball and vision and the importance of vision, but we don't have those studies through the NBA or through basketball as a sport. So we'd certainly encourage, athletic trainers and optometrists and docs who work with a team to develop a study and to give us some data points on, what's average acuity in the NBA. We don't know that. We don't even have that, right? What's the average acuity? What do we need to be a good basketball player? Do we need to have 20/20 vision? We assume as functional specialists that we want to maximize vision, clarity, and function, but we don't have data points that we're trying to match up against like we do in MLB, for instance. So, I think those would be great relationships for us to try to foster through this website. And what we're trying to do is encourage our colleagues and our individuals from an athletic training and optometry standpoint to create those relationships that lead to studies, lead to research, and answer some of those questions for all of us. But the one other case I wanted to go through, which I think was kind of a fun one for us to talk about, was really going back to the relationship that we built. And there was a player that was actually sent into my office that we traded mid-season, so he wasn't part of the preseason evaluations. When he came to our team, the only reason he came to my office was because he needed his driver's license renewed. He had an out-of-state driver's license, and he was referred over to our office to get a quick little vision test to get his driver's license renewed. But, again, we don't do anything quickly. So we sat down and tried to do as thorough of an evaluation as we could. And going through the correction, the individual had 20/20 vision, good clarity. but looking at his retina and doing a full evaluation of his internal health, he had a huge retinal detachment, a retinal detachment that was so close to the central vision, that it was unbelievable that it wasn't detected through college. And in discussing with the athlete, he said, yeah, I remember taking a good shot in college and kind of seeing stars for a while, but no one told me there was really anything wrong. So I just kind of went back on the court and played, and now I'm in the NBA. And, that was an interesting one because what we said was, look, from a functional standpoint, I don't feel good about the guy going back on the court. Now that I know it's there, that's my credibility on the line, without relaying that to our trainer, who then had to relay it, which again wasn't a wonderful conversation. I can only imagine from your end to the general manager, to the coach, to say, look, I don't know that we can let this guy play unless he's protected. And so the aim came in with putting on a pair of sports glasses and being protected. Again, no prescription in them, but only for a protection standpoint. And then we had the player's agent, we had the player's wife saying, you're not wearing these glasses. It makes you look silly on the court, or something like that, right? I mean, there was basically the example, who's this guy? He doesn't know what he's talking about. And you had my back in that instance of saying, look, we have some real reasons here to worry about your safety playing. And we were able to do some imaging and show them where that was. But I think that was a really interesting one, to go back to just the relationship that we built over time that allowed us to go through and communicate that throughout the team, and eventually encourage this player to wear safety glasses. And he wore them for another, 4 or 5 years on the court. He continued to play in the game after we identified that.
Yeah, he'd been playing in the NBA for 10 years and through all of college. And so that was a big adjustment for him to have to look at having to wear goggles, because that's an adjustment that's significant, to put on safety glasses or safety goggles to play professional sports. And it was a team effort, to try to get him convinced to do it, and it was the right thing. And we actually included his former ophthalmologist that he had at his previous team, who he had a relationship with, who also convinced him that it was the right thing to do. So yeah, if we didn't have that, you never know what could happen. That was a large chronic detachment that it could have gotten worse, no doubt, right? I mean, so
all it took was one more shot.
Win. Yeah, that was a win. Yeah. So,
Frazier, Derek, you have anything else for our wonderful friend here before we let him go? I'm thrilled and excited. This is such an awesome opportunity. I just want to thank you again, Eric.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's fun to talk.
My only little addition is more of a congratulations on being part of such a great team for both of you guys. I think that ultimately, Eric, when you brought up the fact that we are no longer, or when you're part of the team, the sports team, the medical group, essentially there are no more silos. We're all working together to make sure those athletes get out there as soon as they can. And so those barriers get knocked down, which is what it should be. So that way we are all talking. And that's essentially how research comes about. That's how relationships are developed. And that's how eventually we can help everybody in the league and in various leagues. So now that, and to develop that community is such a huge benefit, because that's what we're about, is improving athletes' lives. And that then in turn, improves all the other kids in the program too. So I just want to say congratulations with everything you've done, and the pretty cool relationship that you and Keith have. So thank you for sharing your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, Derek, Keith.
Well, good. I just wish you could have had a relationship with someone better than Keith, but
yeah, well,
I apologize for that.
Amen to that.
You get Keith and I talking, and you might end up with 2 hours of material.
Exactly.
Neither of us shut off very easy. Derek, where do you live in Austin?
I am out by the lake in a place called Bee Cave, but I work downtown.
Travis?
Yeah.
My mom and my sister and my sister's husband and her family live in Cedar Park.
Okay. Yeah, that's they get to watch
down.
us win the state championship in football every year, so that's a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually talk about favorite drinks and whiskey for a little bit too, and that's part of our big thing here. So, you have any tidbits on that, Eric, that we can't miss now that you're in a dry state with not a whole heck of a lot of that floating around, right?
Well, I have to smuggle it back in from road trips, but it's I have big Irish family, my mom's side, the Mulherron side, and my last cousin's just finished up school at University of Kentucky, and he sent me a bottle of Town Branch bourbon. It was phenomenal. I loved it. So that's my new one.
Yeah.
Town Branch. Yeah.
Well, I know we had a tradition in our days in DC where we had a little something in the locker rooms just in case for those playoff wins that, were certainly hard fought. And I think sometimes from a medical staff, we feel like we put as much work into it as the players. I know we didn't. Certainly we felt like it. So we need a little something to take the edge off, right?
That was our excuse to have a shot at tequila, I guess. Huh? After some playoff wins, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, I thought you guys said you worked in Washington.
Yeah, what's this win thing?
Yeah. I live in Utah now, right?
At least you can take a bunch of wives.
Wednesday wife, yeah.
Yeah.
Too funny.
Awesome,
Well,
Eric.
good meeting you guys, so.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it very much, my friend.
Yeah, we'll see you when we get back there, and maybe we'll run into you, Derek, and
Sure.
we'll see you.
Anytime.
Yeah, when you get up and beat up on those Trailblazers, you can say hi to Dr. Horner as well.
Yeah, don't worry.
Anytime. I'll take you out for some whiskey. That's fine.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's actually, before we hop off, I don't know if you remember, that's actually one of the situations that we look to hopefully build from an optometry standpoint too, is actually the network. I mean, we actually did refer to Dr. Horn before. I mean, it was a couple of seasons ago, but we had a situation with a player on the road, and you guys happened to be playing the Trailblazers, right. And we picked up the phone and called Dr. Horn and got that player in. And you can do that in other. And people ask me sometimes, hey, do you travel with the teams? You go with the teams? Now, I'm on staff for all of our playoff games. I'm on, at home, but I don't travel with the team because we expect that the team eye doctor will take care of our players when we're on the road, right? So in that situation, it was great because I had the relationship with Dr. Horn to be able to do that. But we're not lucky enough from an optometry standpoint to have the network that the orthopods and things like that do at this point, and that needs to be built up. We need to have that connection, that network that we can pick up the phone and say, hey, we're on the road in Dallas. Dr. Cunningham's right there. Let's have him taking care of it. But that's something that obviously is hugely helpful to you as you're on the road with the relationships that your other medical professionals have with their colleagues. So I think obviously that'd be something that I'd ring the bell for us as a profession too, to kind of build that network, because you guys are a tight network from a trainer standpoint. Every trainer on every team, first name basis, and we're on the road with something, and you don't have something in your medical pack. You can go to them in the spirit of the game, in the spirit of science, and say, hey, I need something. And they're never going to turn their back on you, right?
No, that's right. That is, that, and to be honest, as these guys are getting ramped up here, and I'm trying to get them more interested in sports vision stuff. I'm gonna call on you if something happens.
Yeah, happy to do it. I mean, that's why we started this to begin with, is to spread the word, and I think there's a lot of good to come from it. So the more people that we do, I think the better it is all around. So, I mean, I think that's our goal. We're certainly not trying to hold the keys to the kingdom. We like to talk.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hey, Eric, we have quite a few alums that are down in that area too. There's one guy that I used to work with with Nike who's down in the Utah area, in Salt Lake City area. So if you want to talk, I can send you a couple of their names if you want to reach out to them. So FYI.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah,
now,
Brendan White.
Don't mind doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'll email you their information so you can look at them. You can stalk them online and figure it out, and then I can electronically introduce you if you'd like. So.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's a great resource. I appreciate it.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
All right, well, I got to go watch the Cubs now.
Watch the Cubs lose? Is that what you said? You broke up there for a second. Watch the Cubs lose? Is that what you said?
We might win this series yet.
You got your ring, man. We're starved here in DC, man. It's been a long time since we picked up a trophy in this town.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Man. It's always next year, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was me for 40 years.
I hear you. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate your time very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Horn. Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. Signing off for the Sports Vision Pros.